Welcome to my first vegetable garden, episode 7, and today I want to give you a tour of my garden and give you ideas of what can be grown in containers, talk about container size, and also show you what's going on in the garden, because really now, May 7th, it's warm, it's time to get things out into the garden, and I thought as part of Gardening 101, I'll just give you some options of how you can plant. These are my Determinate variety tomatoes. They grow to a set height, flower, fruit, and then die off. And Determinate variety tomatoes are great for containers. You can see I have different sizes. The red one there is probably 12 to 15 gallons. You need at least a 5-gallon container to easily grow a tomato. If you go smaller, it takes a lot of time to really keep the watering up. And if you miss watering one time in a container and the roots completely dry out, it damages the plant. So you definitely want to start with about a 5-gallon container for most vegetables. Now, that being said, right over there are 3-gallon containers that are perfect for growing a single pepper. Pepper seems to do better in smaller containers. The container right back there, that's a 7-gallon container, and you can kind of just see the general size. The potting mix for this, you can use any potting mix if you want to save yourself time. Just buy what's on sale at the big box stores. Or I usually make it. I take about 50% peat moss, fill the container, and then 50% of any other material. You can check out my videos for more details. But that 50% peat moss really allows you to have a container mix that holds water, and that's the key to successful container gardening, is really having a container mix that will hold water, because if you miss it, if you miss the watering and your plants die out or dry out, they're going to die. You can start tomatoes outdoors when it gets warm, when frost isn't an issue. These are my indeterminate variety tomatoes. I'll talk more about those in a future video. I've got flowers in there. Coming down here, more containers. Those are plastic barrel containers. They're about 12 gallons. That's cilantro right there. You can grow cilantro extremely well in containers. Lettuces, greens like cilantro, spinach can be put into flower boxes. These are a couple different varieties that just went in. Don't mind that. Those dead leaves right there. We had frost last Sunday and Monday, but these plants are coming back from that. Your leafy greens can actually take a frost. Some of the leaves will die out, but as long as the root system is still intact and doesn't freeze out, they'll come right back. I've also started my cucumbers and zucchini and squashes in containers. Now, why would you do that? Of course, you could put them right out into the ground, but my ground's not ready yet, so I start them in there. They'll germinate. Within 2 weeks after germination, you want to get them into a ground. Now, cucumbers and zucchini don't do well in containers unless you really pick up a bush variety cucumber, bush variety squash, or zucchini, and you do want a container about that size for those plants. And that, again, that's probably 12 gallons, but at least a 10-gallon container. They just get extremely large, of course, and they will suck the life out of your soil, so you have to keep them fed. And again, they will really drink up the water. This is my container garden for flowers. Flowers are more forgiving. You can really pack them in there. They're mixed with mostly perennials in there. So once I set them up, they do fine through the winter, and then they just come back, you know, come the warm weather of spring. And flowers are a great way to attract pollinators and good insects to your garden. Here's my pepper garden. Now, peppers can be actually planted a little more closely together than you might read on the seed packages or in places. I've been doing experiments for a while. First of all, notice I have the stakes angled to the right and to the left to my walking path to open space. This just gives more space right in here to let the wind go through, you know, and that really helps with keeping the plant leaves dry and helps deal with, you know, possible diseases and stuff like that. You can plant peppers two to a space. I have a lot of videos on that, on why that's successful. And now in this case, I also put them 6 inches apart. So that's 4 peppers. This is an experimental space just to see if I can get more production out of my plants, more yield, more peppers in smaller spaces. So you can definitely plant peppers two to a spot, give them 12 inches apart back there, and they'll do really, really well. And you can see just some damage. We'll talk about this in other videos. Those holes, Those are from snails and slugs. And what that tells me is you come out, you inspect your garden. That's another tip. Best thing I think if you're just getting a garden started, go out there and look around. Look at the leaves, see what's going on, make notes. For instance, I would put down 5, 7 holes in pepper plants. That's when I know the snails and slugs come out in my area. Spinning around here, this is a 2 foot by, I think it's 10 or 12 feet. You can plant in a small strip like this. We've got kale, we have peas, we have radishes spaced out, more kale. And I think, yeah, the radishes are doing really well. I thought I had 2 radishes there. I was going to pull one out. But you can plant, you know, in a raised bed. A raised bed helps you focus, well, not really focus, but concentrate your resources into a small area. So you're not spending a lot of money like dropping resources down in the path where you're going to walk on and outgrow plants. You can put your amendments in here, your peat moss, your fertilizers, your compost, dirt you may have to bring in, and you don't walk on it. So this stays nice and loose. You can pack plants more closely together, and they do perfectly fine. Since I'm stepping on the outside, the root systems can really spread out through here, and the plants can take care of themselves. So raised beds are a great way to conserve resources by concentrating them in a specific area, and you can pack plants together much more closely. Let's come over here. Now in this area, that's all going to be weeded out and eventually mulched. Here are some of the lettuces that you saw in videos that I started indoors in other Gardening 101 episodes. They are ready to be harvested. Those are my onions I started indoors. Back there are my leeks. Let me come around this way. We've got more kale, and one tip I have is grow what you like. I love kale, so I'm growing a lot more. I like peppers. I'm going to grow double the amount of peppers, and I've added in a bunch of different beans this year. Again, this is a raised bed. Raised beds can get planted earlier than your earth beds in some zones because these will warm up sooner than sometimes the ground. So it's a great way to get things growing more quickly, and again, it conserves the resources by allowing you just to fill a certain space. You can raise a bed as high as you want if you have a bad back or physical limitations. You can create something like this. You can even put legs on it and really raise it up so that you don't have to bend over. It's doing really well. More containers, and that's what I really want to concentrate on for today's episode, is picking the right size container for your plants. These are Determinate variety tomatoes, and again, that means they get to a set height. They don't get as big as the indeterminate varieties. They may get anywhere from, really some of the small ones only a foot tall, but up to about 4 feet, and then they produce their flowers, produce their fruit, and then they die off. But again, about a 7-gallon container. For comparison's sake, that is a 5-gallon container. I'm just growing onions in there, and I'm really growing them just for the onion tops. I'm not concerned about the size of the bulbs. So you can do onions just like that in a container. That is, let's see, we have Swiss chard over there to the right. I think that's perpetual spinach. That's a type of chard too. You can put 2 plants in there. That's about 7 gallons worth of soil in there. The Swiss chard will grow all year long. Spinach in just a plain old flower box. For lettuces, spinach, you only need about 4 inches of depth in the containers. Coming over here, here is kale, growing in a 3-gallon container. That is the Vats Blue Curled. Up here is red Russian kale, doing extremely well. 3-gallon containers. This is a premier kale. I sell all these seeds of the plants you're seeing at my seed shop at www.therustedgarden.com. These are dwarf tomatoes. They only get anywhere from a foot to 2 feet deep. And dwarf tomatoes, the ones that are going to grow not more than 24 inches, of course you can put them in smaller containers. And again, these are about 3-gallon containers. This is my cut and come again lettuce. Overseeded in here. You saw the bigger lettuce out in the the garden bed. If you're going to grow to full size, you want to space this out about one plant every 4 to 6 inches. But when this gets about this tall, I'll cut the leaves off. So for instance, this is my mesclun mix that you can get at the seed shop too. These are tall enough now. I cut them off right about here. They go into salads, leave the roots in the ground. I'll get more leaves. And you can do that in a flower box. And if you are looking for seeds and you go over to my seed shop, make sure you press the tab, click the tab MFVG/bulk. That's the tab for really this channel, My First Vegetable Garden /bulk. You can find seed packs for under $1 in the package deals, and then some of them, you know, compared to the retail price for stores, you're going to save 75%. My brother and I are really looking for seeds that are inexpensive, and then we put together cheap packages to kind of match what should be sown into the garden right now. And again, check out the MFVG tab. That's kohlrabi back there. Peas. Peas always need structural support because they're hollow and the stems will break. Those are just tree branches put in there. But you can get some idea of how you can set up a garden. You don't need a lot of space. You could do something just like this row box if that's all you have, if that's where the sun is. You could do a 4 foot by 4 foot raised bed. You can definitely pack in 2 tomato plants, a couple pepper plants. Grow vertically. That's actually hops growing up there. So it's not difficult. This is a 4 foot by 8 foot raised bed. And you can see peas do extremely well in containers too. That is a larger container. That's probably 15 gallons, maybe 20 gallons, packed in, probably 10 peas in there. They're going to grow up the old cage. You can even use a 5-gallon bucket. Just pick one up at Home Depot, go to your bakeries, go to your restaurants, ask for the free buckets, and peas will do really, really well in there. So I hope this gives you some idea, if you're just starting out a garden, of the different ways you can grow your vegetables in containers, in the beds. Here's a shot real quick of all the flowers I'm growing on my deck. And let's finish it off right over here at the stuff that you've actually been watching me grow since Gardening 101 episode 1. Those are potatoes. Potatoes grow perfectly well in a 5-gallon container. Those are eggplants. And then these are all the seedlings I've started in the episodes. They're going to go out into my garden here and also at the community garden. So things are finally moving along. We had the frost last week that surprised me a little bit, but I think we're finally out of it. So a lot of the Gardening 101 episodes will now be out in the garden, you know, so you can see how the plants are doing. And we'll get into planting. We'll get into all different kinds of things. How do you take care of peppers? How do you take care of tomatoes? Feeding them, dealing with pests, dealing with diseases. So hopefully you subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, please check out my seed shop, www.therustedgarden.com, and click on that MFVG tab because you'll find you can save a lot of money on the seeds there. Thanks for watching.